My father was the town drunk. But he was also the only man who knew what happened on that mountain in '72. They called him Crazy Joe, behind his back, and sometimes to his face, depending on how much he'd had to drink and how many people were around. He wore the nickname like a badge of honor, slurred it into punchlines and old mining songs. But I knew better. I saw the tremble in his hands when the sun dipped behind the ridge. I heard the way he whispered at the fireplace some nights, when he thought I was asleep. I hadn't been back to Black Hollow in 15 years. Not since I left for Richmond. Not since I told him I never wanted to see his drunk, bitter face again. But when the call came from Miss Carroll at the general store, "Your daddy passed in his sleep last night, honey," I packed a bag and pointed my truck west. The drive into the mountains felt like a rewind. Every bend in the road a memory I'd tried to lose. The kudzu was thicker now, swallowing what little was left of the town. The gas station was gone. The schoolhouse boarded up. But his cabin still stood. Sagging, weather-worn, and stubborn like him. The funeral was quick. Closed casket. No preacher. Just me, Miss Carroll, and two old men who might have been miners once, standing silent as the pine box was lowered into red clay. No one cried. There wasn't anything left to mourn. It was when I returned to the cabin that I found it. The map. It wasn't hidden well, just folded up in a rusted coffee can beneath the floorboard in front of the hearth. Scotch tape held its edges together. Ink bled from water damage. But it was unmistakable, hand-drawn ridgelines, a path marked in red, and 3 black X's. I almost laughed. Another one of his stories, I figured. Buried treasure. Moonshine stills. Government secrets. He told them all, and no one ever listened. But something about the way the map smelled, earthy, like it had been underground for years, and the care in its lines made me hesitate. It was curiosity, not belief, that made me pry up the hearthstone. My fingers were raw by the time I found it, a metal box, sealed in wax, the kind my grandfather used to store coins in. Inside, a black and white photo of a girl I didn't recognize. Blonde curls. Freckles. Maybe 10 years old. A rusted switchblade. And a sheriff's badge, dulled with age. I stared at it for a long time. There were no names. No note. Just that girl's face looking back at me, like she'd been waiting all this time. The stories always started with a girl going missing in '72. That much I remembered. He'd tell it after his second bottle, usually by the fire. "They took her up the mountain," he'd whisper. "Sheriff said it was a bear, but I saw what they did." Back then, I thought it was liquor talking. Now I wasn't so sure. I unfolded the map again. The trail wound past Devil's Elbow, skirted the mining tunnels, and ended at a mark labeled only Red Hollow. I didn't sleep that night. The map sat beside me on the kitchen table, the box beside it. I thought about calling someone, state police, maybe, but what would I even say? That my drunk dead father left behind evidence for a 50-year-old mystery no one believed ever happened. By dawn, I'd made up my mind. I was going up the mountain. Not for him. For the girl. Or maybe, if I was being honest, for me. Because part of me needed to know if he'd ever told the truth. And what that meant for everything I'd run from. The trail was worse than I remembered. Roots had cracked the old path, and brambles clawed at my jeans. I carried the map in a plastic sleeve, the box in my pack. The higher I climbed, the quieter it got. No birds. No wind. Just the crunch of my boots on damp soil. I found the first X around noon. It was a burned-out shack, half collapsed and crawling with vines. Something about the place made my skin itch. Inside, just a few broken chairs and a pile of charred wood. But scratched into the wall, nearly invisible beneath soot, were the letters CR. I didn't know what they meant. The second X was deeper in, where the ridge opened to a clearing. The ground was torn, like it had been dug up years ago and never healed. There were shards of glass and something that looked like an old boot's sole. A breeze stirred the trees, and for a moment I swore I heard crying. The last mark, Red Hollow, lay beyond a ridge choked with fallen pines. I climbed, slipped, and bled my way through. The map showed a narrow gap, and sure enough, between two boulders I found it. Red Hollow wasn't red. Not anymore. Just a sunken glade, ringed by dead trees and silence. At the center stood a stone slab, waist-high, moss-eaten. Something was carved into it. I brushed away lichen and read, "Forgive us." And beneath it, fresh earth. Disturbed, like it had been dug up and filled again. My hands moved before I could stop them. The dirt was looser than I expected. 6 inches down, I found bones. Small. Fragile. A child's. I dropped back, heart jackhammering. The girl. He hadn't lied. He'd buried the truth all these years. And now it was mine to carry. I didn't come down the mountain the same man who went up. I left the bones where they lay, covered the earth again with shaking hands. I didn't mark it. Didn't take anything. Just stood there until the sun dipped behind the ridge and the world turned gray. Then I made my way back down, half slipping, half running, with the box banging against my back like a curse. At the cabin, I washed the dirt off my hands, watched the water turn rust-red in the sink. My reflection in the cracked mirror looked older than I remembered. Not tired. Worn. Like the mountains had scraped something loose inside me and left the wound open. I poured a glass of the whiskey my father kept behind the stove. Same brand. Same bottle I remembered from the worst nights. I almost laughed. But I drank it. I drank it because I needed to feel something heavy and warm in my chest that wasn't fear. That night I dreamed of her. The girl in the photograph stood at the edge of the clearing. She didn't speak. Just stared. Behind her, shadows moved through the trees, tall, slow shapes. Men maybe. Or not. Her mouth opened like she was screaming, but no sound came. And when I reached for her, her face twisted into someone else's, my father's. I woke up gasping. The map was still on the table, edges curling. I stared at it through the dawn light until I noticed something I'd missed, a date, faintly etched near the second X. August 17th, 72. The day she went missing. I checked the town archives online, using the weak Wi-Fi from Miss Carroll's shop. The local paper from that summer had a headline. Young girl vanishes near mine trail, authorities suspect animal attack. Her name was Ellie Ruth Carter. 10 years old. Last seen playing near Devil's Elbow. I called the sheriff's office. Told them I found something, an old box, possibly linked to a cold case. I didn't mention the bones. Not yet. Didn't know why. Maybe because I didn't trust them. Maybe because I needed time. A deputy came out. Young. Too clean for this place. He poked through the box with gloved fingers, took photos with his phone. Where'd you say you found this? He asked. Belonged to my father. I'm cleaning out his cabin. He nodded. We'll take it. Mind if we hang on to it for a bit? I shrugged. Be my guest. But I made copies of everything first. Scans of the photo. Notes on the switchblade. A rubbing of the sheriff's badge. I didn't trust anyone. Not yet. Because something still didn't add up. That badge. It wasn't just any badge. It matched the design from the early 70s. Sheriff Howard Rusk had been in office back then. My father used to spit at his name. Said he was the worst kind of man, crooked with a clean smile. I remembered the way Dad would stare into the fire, bottle in hand. They all knew, he'd mutter. That badge? That ain't protection. That's permission. The next day, I drove into town. Black Hollow was smaller than I remembered. Or maybe just emptier. Miss Carroll saw me from the porch and waved. Back already? She asked, brushing flour off her apron. I got questions, Carol. About that girl. Ellie Carter. Her face changed. Not surprised, more like something clenched behind her eyes. That was a long time ago, Eli. You remember her? She nodded slowly. Sweet thing. Loved to sing. Her daddy worked the mine. Mama ran off. Folks said it was a bear. Some said she ran away. Truth is, nobody really wanted to know. Why not? She looked past me, toward the mountains. Because we're a town that knows how to forget. Sometimes forgetting's the only way you survive. I didn't press her. Not then. But I left wondering what my father had tried so hard to remember. That night, I went through his journals. Dozens of them, stuffed into the attic beneath old newspapers and mouse droppings. Most were ramblings, dreams, rants about the mine, the government, people who weren't real. But one entry caught me. A single line, scribbled across an otherwise blank page. He came to me the night she died. Said the mountain would eat us all if we didn't bury it. The handwriting was shaky, but unmistakably his. Who was he? I turned the page. Nothing. So I called someone I hadn't spoken to in 2 decades. Ronnie Vance. My father's old drinking buddy. Used to sit on the porch with him, spinning tales until dawn. He picked up on the 3rd ring. You got a ghost in your throat, boy. Ronnie. It's Eli. Joe's son. A pause. Then, hell done froze. I need to talk. About what happened in 72. Silence. Then, come tomorrow. Before dark. Click. I stared at the dead line, phone pressed to my ear like it could still speak. My father had buried something deep in that mountain. A truth so twisted it turned to rot inside him. But now the rot was rising. And I wasn't sure I could stop it. Ronnie Vance lived 3 miles out from Black Hollow proper, where the gravel turned to mud and the trees grew thick enough to whisper. I followed the ruts in the road to a sagging trailer perched on cinder blocks, surrounded by rusted car frames and the skeletons of riding mowers. He was waiting on the porch, hunched in a lawn chair, a cigarette burning low between 2 fingers. Same greasy ball cap. Same glassy eyes. But older now, shriveled like a leaf left out in the sun too long. Didn't think you'd show, he said without looking up. You told me to come. Doesn't mean you would. I sat across from him, the wood groaning under my weight. He finally met my eyes. You see it? What? The truth. Or whatever's left of it. I nodded. Red Hollow. There's a grave up there. And a stone. Said forgive us. Ronnie dragged from his cigarette. He never could, you know. Your daddy. Not after what they did. Who? He looked at me then, full on. All of them. Sheriff Rusk. Them mine bosses. Even some of the boys you thought were good church folk. The whole damn town, damn near. They did something they couldn't bury deep enough. Ellie Carter? He flinched. Lord. You said her name. She's up there, Ronnie. I saw her bones. He shook his head slowly. It was supposed to be over. Joe swore he'd take it to the grave. That's the only reason they let him live. They? He didn't answer. Just stared at the tree line. You were there, I said. Weren't you? Ronnie's face twisted. Not like they were. I just heard things. Saw some after. I told Joe he needed to run, take you and go. But he wouldn't. Said if he left, it'd all be for nothing. What happened that night? He stubbed out the cigarette and lit another with shaking fingers. Ellie found something. Or saw it. Not sure. But she was snooping near the mine where she didn't belong. Sheriff caught her. Said she'd misunderstood. But Joe, he knew better. He said she was gonna tell. And they couldn't have that. I felt cold down to my marrow. So they killed her? Not just killed. Ronnie looked sick. They used her. Ritual or sacrifice or some damn thing. They said it was for the mountain. Said it kept the seams rich and the ground quiet. You think coal comes easy? That mountain's a beast, son. It eats. And sometimes folks feed it. My breath caught. That's insane. Maybe. But after that night? Mine ran smooth. Richest vein in 30 years. Folks called it a miracle. But Joe knew. And it ate him alive. I stood, heart hammering. Why didn't anyone stop it? You don't stop men like Rusk. You either join them or get buried beside what you're trying to fight. I stared at the trees, the wind picking up, brushing the leaves like a whisper. Ronnie reached into his jacket and pulled out something wrapped in oilcloth. He handed it to me with both hands. Your daddy gave me this the night he made that map. Told me to keep it till the right time. I unwrapped it carefully. A key. Old and iron. And a photograph. My father. Younger. Standing beside Sheriff Rusk. Between them, Ellie Carter, alive, holding a birthday balloon. There's a lockbox in the old mine office, Ronnie said. Basement level, under the desk. That key'll open it. But you go poking around down there, you best be ready. Some things don't stay buried. I left him on the porch, staring at the woods like they were about to speak. The mine office sat like a tombstone at the base of the ridge. I hadn't been inside since I was 12. The windows were smashed, the door half hanging. Inside, it smelled like mold and ash. I followed my flashlight down rusted stairs into the belly of the place. Dust choked the air. Every step creaked like it was warning me. The basement was cluttered with old equipment, torn manuals, busted chairs. But the desk still stood. I crouched. Found the compartment beneath. The key fit perfectly. Inside was a ledger. Handwritten. Page after page of names, dates, and something labeled offering. Some entries had crosses beside them. Others had amounts. Others still had no notes, just a red X. One name was underlined 3 times. Ellie Ruth Carter. And beside it, in red ink, the hollow accepted. Seam opened. Quiet for now. I stumbled back, bow rising. There was more. A reel-to-reel tape. Labeled, Confession, August 19th, 72. I took it. Stuffed it in my pack and got the hell out of there. Outside, the wind was howling. Not loud. Just steady. Like breathing. I didn't know if I was digging up truth or just slipping into my father's madness. But I knew one thing now. They fed that mountain. And I was next in line to pay the price for what they'd done. I didn't drive back to the cabin right away. I parked by the creek and just sat there, engine ticking, heart still caught in my throat. That reel-to-reel tape weighed 1,000 pounds in my pack. Like it carried something more than sound. Like it carried consequence. I needed someone who could play it. Someone who wouldn't ask too many questions. So I drove to Tanner. Walt Tanner ran the pawn shop over in Maple Run, 20 miles north. He'd known my dad. Used to say they were bad for each other but good at cards. I found him behind the counter, fiddling with a busted typewriter. He looked up and whistled. Well, well. Ain't seen your mug in a long time, Eli. Need a favor? I showed him the tape. He narrowed his eyes. Where'd you dig that up? Joe's old things. Jesus. He's still hoarding ghosts? He left me more than ghosts, Walt. He didn't ask questions. Just led me into the back, where he kept the old gear. It smelled like oil and mildew, and the machines looked like they hadn't breathed in years. But he found a reel-to-reel and coaxed it to life. The tape whirred. Then hissed. Then a voice began. This is Joseph Wade. Date is August 19th, 1972. If you're hearing this, I've failed. Or I've finally done something right. Walt looked at me. I just nodded. They said it was for the town. Said it was necessary. That the seams were drying, that we needed to honor the land. Sheriff Rusk made it sound holy. Like we were savant everyone. But that little girl, Ellie, she didn't understand. She wasn't supposed to be there. The tape cracked with static. I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't know what they were gonna do to her. I thought we were just scaring her. Just making sure she kept quiet. But when the knife came out, when the blood hit that stone. Walt leaned back, hand covering his mouth. She screamed my name. I still hear it. Every night. I see her face when the fire burns low. Rusk said if I spoke I'd join her, Said the Hollow would take me too. But I've carried this long enough. Let the world know what Black Hollow did. Let them dig until they find her. Just forgive me. I didn't save her. But I'd buried her with a prayer. The tape clicked. Walt turned it off. Silence folded in like a blanket. You believe him? He asked. I nodded. I've seen the grave. He exhaled, long and low. You can't unspill blood, Eli. Especially not in a place like this. I left with the tape, heavier than when I came. Back at the cabin, I couldn't sit still. I laid out the ledger, the map, the photo, and the tape like puzzle pieces that refused to connect. There were still names in that book I didn't recognize. Still offerings unaccounted for. I needed help. Not the law. Someone with reach. With reasons to care. So I called Mara. She picked up on the second ring. Eli? Her voice cracked something open in me. Old wounds. Old warmth. I need a favor. You disappear for 15 years, then call in a favor? I wouldn't if it wasn't serious. Silence. Then, where are you? Black Hollow. A sharp inhale. You went back? My dad's dead. Left me a trail I can't ignore. You think I can help? You're still a reporter, right? She was quiet for a beat. I'm on a desk now. But I've still got teeth. I told her everything. The map. The bones. The badge. The tape. When I finished, she said, Send me what you've got. All of it. I'll be there tomorrow. I didn't sleep. I listened to the tape again. Watched the trees sway in the dark, their shadows long and hungry across the floorboards. At some point I thought I heard whispering outside. But when I opened the door, there was nothing but wind. Mara arrived in the morning. She looked different. Harder. But when she hugged me, it was like we never said goodbye. Jesus, Eli, she whispered. What have you gotten into? I handed her the evidence. She flipped through it with a practiced eye. This isn't a story. This is a reckoning. She spent the rest of the day recording interviews. Me, Miss Carroll, even Ronnie. We kept it quiet. We knew noise would bring ears we didn't want. That night, she looked at me across the kitchen table. You realize this could blow the whole town apart. Maybe it should. She nodded. But she didn't sleep either. Because none of us could ignore what the mountain had swallowed. And now, we were digging in its belly. Somewhere, something was bound to wake up. Mara wanted to go back up the mountain. I told her it wasn't safe, not just because of the terrain, but because of who might be watching. But she had that look in her eye, the one I remembered from when she got someone fired from the State House with a single article. We packed light. Just our packs, a flask of water, and a crowbar I kept by the front door. Not sure what I thought we needed for. Protection, maybe. Or digging. The air changed as we climbed. Thinner. Still. Like the trees were holding their breath. This place doesn't want to be found, Mara said. We reached Red Hollow by late afternoon. The clearing hadn't changed, still ringed with dead trees, still holding that eerie hush, like sound didn't dare enter. Mara crouched by the stone and brushed the moss back with gloved fingers. It's older than it looks, she murmured. This isn't some quick memorial. Someone chiseled this with care. She studied the dirt around it. Disturbed. Recently. I nodded. That was me. I didn't take anything. I couldn't. She looked up at me. She's here? I didn't answer. She stood, then walked the perimeter. Her reporter's instinct kicked in, scanning everything, measuring every shadow. Then she stopped. There's more than one grave, she said. I moved beside her. She pointed at subtle depressions in the earth, 4, maybe 5, in a rough arc overgrown but unmistakable. I felt my stomach drop. How many offerings did that book list? She asked. 23. Mara's jaw clenched. We have to tell someone. They already know. Or they did. This whole town was built on it. She shook her head. Not everyone. Not the world. But that was the thing. I wasn't sure the world would care. Not the way she hoped. On the hike back, Mara stopped suddenly. Her eyes fixed on something in the woods. Eli, she said quietly, we're being followed. I turned slowly. Nothing but trees. But I felt it too. That pressure. That weight in the silence. We didn't run. That felt like the wrong thing to do. Instead, we kept walking, steady and sure, not speaking again until we were back at the truck. Do you think it was one of them? She asked. Could have been. Or something else? I didn't answer. Couldn't. That night, she uploaded everything, photos, scans of the ledger, even a clip from the tape, to a private drive. We agreed, if anything happened to us, she'd send it to every newsroom and Justice Department she could reach. But that was only a backup. Because Mara wanted to confront the sheriff. He's the son of Rusk, isn't he? She asked. I nodded. Clay Rusk. Sheriff now for over a decade. You think he knows? I think he's inherited more than a badge. We met him the next morning, unannounced, at the sheriff's station. It was cleaner than I remembered. But the same eyes watched us from behind the glass. Rusk came out with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Eli Wade, he said. Heard you were back. This is Mara Klein. Journalist. I figured. We found something up on the ridge. You should see it. He studied me. Then Mara. Then nodded. Let's take a ride. We followed him in his cruiser up into the hills, not all the way to Red Hollow, but to a small turnout near Devil's Elbow. He stopped, killed the engine, got out, and leaned on the hood. You should leave it alone, he said. Both of you. Mara crossed her arms. You threatening us? No. I'm telling you what my father told yours. I stepped forward. You think the mountain's still hungry? He looked at me, then at the trees. I think it never stopped eating. We left without another word. Mara was pale by the time we got back. You believe him? I believe he does, I said. And that was worse. Because belief shapes fear. And fear builds shrines. We didn't sleep that night either. We waited. For something. For someone. The wind never stopped. And just before dawn, the front door creaked open. But no one was there. We searched the property at first light. No prints. No broken branches. No sign of forced entry. Just the door, swinging slightly in the breeze like it had been nudged open by a hand that left no trace. Mara was jumpy. Not scared, angry. She cursed under her breath as she double-checked the locks, moved her files, reinforced the windows. Someone's trying to scare us. Or warn us. She looked at me hard. What's the difference? By mid-morning, she'd gone back through the ledger. Found 3 more names marked with a red X and cross-referenced them with county missing persons records. All children. All within 10 miles of Black Hollow. All between 1968 and 1975. They knew, she said. The town knew. There's no way that many kids disappear without whispers. They called my father crazy for talking. Because he was the only one left with a conscience. It was the first time someone had said that about him. Later that day, we got a call. Blocked number. Male voice. Raspy. You're digging in graves that don't want sunlight, he said. Turn around or join what's buried. Then he hung up. We traced it anyway. Nothing. Spoofed. Burner. Dead end. That night, Mara suggested we visit the church. The one on the far side of town? I asked. Old Pinewood one? Exactly. I saw it mentioned twice in the ledger. Once next to Ellie's name. So we went. It looked the same as it had when I was a kid, peeling paint, steeple leaning slightly, doors always unlocked. They said the town didn't use it anymore, but it was kept just clean enough to suggest someone still did. Inside, it smelled of wax and cedar. The pews were dusty. The altar untouched. But in the back room, what used to be the pastor's study, we found something. A cabinet. Locked. Mara picked it with a nail file. Inside, candles. Dozens. Carved stones. Bone fragments in little muslin pouches. And at the very back, a notebook bound in leather. We opened it. It wasn't scripture. It was ritual. Pages of incantations, diagrams, symbols I couldn't read. Dates. Names. And a phrase, repeated over and over. The mountain provides. The hollow remembers. Mara photographed every page. When we left, it felt colder outside than it had before we entered. The air had that hollow ring to it, like something was listening. Back at the cabin, Mara was silent. She laid the photos out on the table, side by side with the map and the ledger. Pieces of something older, darker than just the cover-up. This wasn't just murder, she said. This was worship. I sat down hard. They made sacrifices. To the hollow, she whispered. We both looked toward the mountain, looming in the distance. It had never seemed so alive. Later, Mara told me something she hadn't said before. I think your father wanted you to find all this. Not just the map. All of it. He left a trail. He barely spoke to me in the end. Maybe not with words. But he knew no one else would follow it. Only you. I wanted to believe that. Needed to. But I still remembered the nights he screamed in his sleep. The way he'd stare into the fire like it was showing him something only he could see. Maybe it had been. We agreed to publish the story. Even if it meant burning the town's name into history. But before we could do that, we had to go to the last name in the ledger. One without an X. Without a note. Just a name. Joseph Wade. My father. Why would he put himself in there? I asked. Mara looked at the page, then at me. Maybe he wasn't just the witness, she said. Maybe he was supposed to be the final offering. And the question that followed chilled me more than anything else had. If he was, who took his place? I didn't sleep. Not that night. That question kept circling my head like a buzzard. Who took his place? And more than that, who decided? The mountain didn't write in ledgers. Men did. Men with power and guilt, and enough fear to make them believe in dark gods beneath the stone. Mara stayed up too. She sat by the fire, cross-legged with her laptop, digitizing everything. She didn't speak much. Just paused now and then to glance at the window. Like she was waiting for someone to knock. Around 3 in the morning, I heard the crunch of gravel. I grabbed the crowbar, nodded to Mara. She slipped her hand into her coat, where she tucked a small pistol she'd borrowed from Walt Tanner earlier that week. Then a knock. 3 taps. Eli, came a voice. It's Ronnie. I opened the door. Ronnie looked like hell. Wet from the rain, eyes bloodshot, breathing hard. He didn't wait to be invited. They're gonna burn it all, he said. Everything. What are you talking about? They know you found the book. The church. That tape. Rusk stirring up the old guard. I heard talk down at Granger's feed store. Word is, they're coming tonight. For what? Mara asked. To shut you up. To clean the slate. Same way they always did. Fire, fear, and forgetting. My stomach turned. Ronnie sat heavily at the table. I tried to stay out of it. I did. But I can't let them do this again. Your daddy, he tried to stop it too. They told him if he kept quiet, they'd leave him alone. But he couldn't. Not after what he saw. So he put himself in the ledger, Mara said softly. Ronnie nodded. Rusk wanted to make an example of him. Said a sacrifice from within would seal the mountain for good. But someone stopped it. Replaced him at the last second. Who? I asked. He didn't speak. Just looked down at the floor like it might swallow him. Mara stood. We need to get this out. Tonight. Before they try to destroy it. Ronnie's head snapped up. If you send it now, they'll know. They'll come quicker. Harder. I looked at the fire. Then at the box on the mantel. the one that held my father's badge and the girl's photo. Then let them come. We backed everything up, onto drives, into cloud storage, even sent pieces of it to Mara's old editor, flagged urgent. Then we waited. We didn't wait long. The first sign was headlights on the tree-line. No engines, just the glow. 3 cars. Maybe 4. Then figures. Flashlights bobbing. Voices low and mean. I killed the lights in the cabin. Mara chambered around. Ronnie grabbed the crowbar. We didn't have a plan. Just adrenaline and too much truth to let go. They surrounded the house. Didn't knock this time. Come on out, Eli. A voice called. Rusk. You know what this is. You know it can't live above ground. Mara whispered. We have to make it public now. While we still can. I nodded, pulled out my phone, and began uploading the final file, a stitched video of the tape, the ledger, the church notebook, the graves. The door rattled. Wood splintered. Mara hit send. The upload bar crawled forward. Rusk shouted, You think this ends it? You think the hollow forgets? A rock smashed the window. Ronnie roared and swung the crowbar, knocking back the first man through. Mara fired a shot into the ceiling. The others hesitated. But the upload ticked forward. 50%. They're going to kill us, Mara said, voice shaking. No, I said. They're going to try. Smoke filled the cabin. They'd lit something. Threw it through the window. Ronnie batted it away, but the room was already thick with heat. 70%. The front door burst inward. I saw Rusk's face. Pale. Sweating. Eyes like an animal backed into a corner. Then he froze. Behind us, behind the cabin, came a sound. A groaning. A rumble. The earth moved. The mountain waking. Everyone, Rusk, his men, even Ronnie, stopped. And in that moment, the upload finished. A ding from Mara's laptop. Sent, she whispered. Then the lights cut out. And the mountain opened its throat and screamed. We all dropped to our knees. Hands over ears. The sound wasn't sound, it was something deeper, older. A roar from beneath the bedrock. When it stopped, Rusk was gone. So were his men. Just footprints in the ash, leading into the woods. The hollow had taken them. And left us behind. Mara looked at me, tears on her cheeks. Did we win? I didn't know. But the truth was no longer buried. And the mountain had answered. The morning after felt like waking in the middle of someone else's story. The cabin was half ruined. Smoke-stained. Glass and dirt in every corner. The door hung open like it had lost the will to close. Mara sat on the porch with her knees drawn to her chest, staring at the tree-line where the footprints had vanished. They didn't run, she said. They walked into it. I joined her. The woods were quiet again. No wind. No birds. Just that dense stillness that clung to everything like dew. Ronnie hadn't spoken since the night before. He sat at the table, staring into his hands like he was trying to remember what they'd done. The video had gone live. Mara's editor posted it within the hour. We were everywhere, local news, then regional, then national. The names. The map. The ritual. The bones. But no one came. Not the FBI. Not the state police. Not a single car down that gravel road. I don't understand. Mara whispered. They're afraid. I said. No, Eli. They're pretending it didn't happen. They're stepping around it. She was right. The story made headlines for a day. Then disappeared. Just like the children. We didn't know what to do. We dragged the truth into the daylight, and all it did was burn a hole in the world no one wanted to look through. On the third day, Ronnie was gone. No note. No footprints. Just his crowbar leaning against the porch and a small paper bag on the table. Inside, my father's switchblade. And a slip of paper. You finished what he started. That's enough. But it didn't feel like enough. Not with the ledger still half full. Not with the ritual book only partially translated. Not with the graves still unmarked. That afternoon, I hiked back to Red Hollow. Alone. The clearing was just as I left it. Quiet. Watching. I walked to each depression in the soil, knelt, whispered their names. The ones I knew. The ones the ledger told me. Ellie Ruth Carter. Thomas Dean. Margaret Lee. Sarah Ann Holt. And more. Then I stood at the stone. Forgive us, it said. I wondered again who carved that. I don't know how long I stayed. The sun was low when I turned back, and the air smelled like copper and pine. Mara was waiting when I returned. She had a bag slung over her shoulder, her laptop tucked under one arm. I'm going back, she said. I need to tell it again. Loud. I need to scream it until someone finally hears. I nodded. And me? You. She paused. You belong here. You're the keeper now. I don't want to be. I don't think it cares. We didn't hug. Didn't cry. Just looked at each other for a long moment. Then she left. I watched her car vanish into the dust. And I stayed. I repaired the door. Cleaned the cabin. Buried the box under the hearth again. Maybe someone would need it one day. Sometimes at night I hear them. Not screams. Not voices. Just music. Faint and old. Like children humming a tune no one remembers how to finish. The mountain's quiet again. For now. But I know it's not asleep. Just listening. Days passed. Then weeks. The air grew thicker, like the mountain was pressing against the sky. The town didn't speak to me. When I came into the general store, conversations died. Miss Carroll served me with tight lips and downcast eyes. But no one ran me off. Maybe they thought I was cursed. Maybe they were right. I spent my days reading through the ritual book, piecing it together like a cracked mirror. The language wasn't just Appalachian folk magic, it was older, borrowed from something deeper. Half Latin. Half symbols I couldn't find online or in any archive Mara had access to. It talked about balance. About sacrifice as communion. The hollow wasn't a place to them. It was a mouth. A heart. An inheritance. And the mountain wasn't the enemy. We were. I started to understand what my father meant in his journal entries. The dreams. The voices. The way the land seemed to speak if you listened long enough. And I listened. That's how I knew something was coming. I woke one night to see the trees glowing faintly beyond the cabin, their edges shimmering like candlelight. I stepped outside, barefoot, drawn like a moth. And I saw them. Children. Not real, not flesh and blood, but outlines of them. Pale, humming. Moving in a slow circle in the woods. Ellie was among them. Her face was calm. She looked at me. Not with pain. Not with blame. But with knowing. I couldn't breathe. I dropped to my knees. They didn't speak. Just turned, one by one, and drifted into the trees. Gone. The next morning, there was a knock. Mara. I had to come back, she said, her eyes rimmed red. You were right. No one listened. Not really. They wanted spectacle, not truth. I let her in. Made coffee. Told her what I saw. She believed me. Not because she wanted to. But because something had changed in her too. Like the hollow had left fingerprints she couldn't wash off. She pulled a flash drive from her pocket. I compiled everything. The full story. But not for clicks. For preservation. If no one else will remember, then we will. We drove up the mountain together. To Red Hollow. We dug, not into the graves, but near them. Found a dry patch beneath the oldest pine. Buried the flash drive in a mason jar. Sealed in wax. Like the box under the hearth. A new offering. Not to the mountain. To the future. Before we left, Mara placed a smooth stone over the spot. No words. Just a mark. Proof someone had cared enough to leave something behind. That night, We sat by the fire, not speaking, just listening to the wind whisper through the trees. I asked her, "Do you think they're still out there? Rusk and the others?" She shook her head. "No. I think the mountain kept its debt. We both knew it wouldn't last forever. Truth never stays buried. And neither do the lies that protect it. There would be more diggers. More seekers. And when they came, they'd find what we left. The map. The tape. The ledger. The names. And maybe then, finally, someone would finish the song those children hummed. Maybe then, the hollow would let go." The hollow didn't speak again. Not with fire, not with screams. But it watched. I could feel it in the way the cabin walls creaked in the still hours. In the way the wind curled around the porch, low and slow, like a song stuck between breaths. Weeks became months. Mara returned to the city. She called sometimes. Sent clippings. Stories from places that felt too familiar, cold towns with sudden sinkholes, unexplained disappearances. I read them and marked them on a map of my own. Maybe it wasn't just Black Hollow. Maybe the mountain was a piece of something larger. A lattice of sacrifice and silence stretching farther than we ever guessed. I stayed. I worked the land. Fixed the roof. Built a fence that didn't need to keep anything out, only to mark that I was still here. Miss Carroll passed in her sleep. They buried her under the dogwood by the church. No preacher. Just a few townsfolk. I stood back. Didn't say a word. Just nodded. She'd known too much and carried it with quiet grace. Sometimes I visited the hollow. Not often. Just enough to make sure the stones still stood, that the graves were undisturbed. I brought flowers in spring. Left pine cones in fall. I didn't know the rules, but I followed what felt right. One evening, I found something new. A child's drawing, stuck between two stones near the grave. Crayon on torn paper. A stick figure with long hair smiling. Signed Ellie. I sat down right there, back against the stone, and wept. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe a trick. Or maybe she was still here. One of the names in the ledger remained untouched. Mine. No X. No date. Just Joseph Wade, Jr. Sometimes I wondered if that meant the mountain was still waiting. If it thought the deal wasn't complete. But I think that's wrong. I think the mountain wanted to be known. Not worshipped. Not feared. Just seen. And I saw it. My father did too. It cost him everything. But he kept the truth alive, even buried under silence and bottle after bottle. He wasn't the town drunk. Not really. He was the keeper of a truth no one else had the strength to carry. And now it's mine. So if you find this, if you read the map, or follow the trail, or hear the humming in the trees, don't run. Sit down. Listen. Remember. The hollow isn't gone. But it's no longer alone. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough.